Birthdays had always held a special place in the narrator's heart, especially when it came to her husband. Over the years, she had made it her mission to ensure his day was celebrated with love and meaning. This year, however, felt different. After months of sensing a subtle distance between them, she decided to go all out, to remind him of the bond they shared and reignite the closeness that seemed to have dimmed with time. She told herself this birthday would be one he would never forget. The narrator began planning weeks in advance. She thought about the things that made her husband smile, his favorite meals, the stories he loved to retell, the small gestures that once made him feel cherished. She envisioned an evening that would feel both romantic and deeply personal. Not a grand party with friends or extravagant gifts, but something more intimate, something that spoke directly to the heart. Her plan unfolded with meticulous detail. She started with the ambiance. She pictured the house glowing with warm candlelight, the table dressed with fresh flowers and soft music playing in the background, the kind that would take them back to their early days of dating. Every corner of the space would whisper care and intention, creating the perfect setting for laughter, conversation, and connection. The menu was another important piece. She decided to cook his favorite meal from scratch, even if it meant spending hours in the kitchen. She wanted him to feel not only celebrated but also cared for in the simplest, most genuine way. The dinner would end with his favorite dessert, a sweet reminder of how well she knew him. But the heart of the plan, the piece she poured the most thought into, was the gift. It wasn't about price or extravagance. Instead, she chose something symbolic, a keepsake that told the story of their love. Perhaps a personalized photo album filled with memories from their years together, or a watch engraved with words that spoke of time spent and time yet to come. Whatever form it took, the gift was meant to be a reflection of their journey, a tangible reminder of the bond that had carried them through laughter, challenges, and countless moments of togetherness. As the day approached, the narrator's excitement grew. She could hardly wait to see his face when he walked through the door and discovered what she had prepared. In her mind, she pictured his smile, the warmth in his eyes, the gratitude in his embrace. She imagined the night ending with shared laughter and quiet conversation, the kind that reminded them why they had chosen each other in the first place. For her, this wasn't just about a birthday. It was about hope. Hope that the effort she poured into the evening would bridge whatever invisible gap had been forming between them. It was about rekindling the spark, reminding him and herself that their love was still alive, still worth celebrating. What she didn't know was that the night she so carefully planned would take a turn she never could have predicted. And the gift she prepared would pale in comparison to the gift of truth that was about to unravel. The day of her husband's birthday arrived, and with it came a restless energy that made the narrator move through the house like a whirlwind. She woke up early, determined to make everything perfect. From the moment her eyes opened, her mind replayed the plan she had carefully mapped out, the decorations, the meal, the atmosphere, and of course the gift. Nothing could be left to chance. The first step was transforming their home into a warm, inviting space. She lit scented candles that filled the rooms with the soft fragrance of vanilla and sandalwood, his favorite combination. She arranged fresh roses in a vase at the center of the dining table, their deep red petals adding a touch of romance. The lights were dimmed to create a glow that was both calming and intimate. By the time she stepped back to admire her work, the once ordinary living room had been transformed into a space fit for a quiet celebration of love. Next came the cooking. She tied on her apron and dove into preparing his favorite meal. The kitchen quickly filled with the rich aromas of garlic, butter, and roasted spices. Every stir of the spoon, every careful seasoning carried intention. It wasn't just food. It was a labor of love. She remembered how he used to say her cooking was better than any restaurant's, and the thought made her smile as she worked. Hours passed in a blur of chopping, simmering, and baking until the dishes were ready, each one crafted with precision. As she set the table, she placed his plate with extra care, folding the napkin into a shape she knew he would notice. Every detail mattered because for her, these small gestures were the language of devotion. Finally, she turned to herself. She wanted to look her best, not in an extravagant way, but in a way that reminded him of the woman he had fallen in love with. She chose a dress he had once complimented, the color bringing out warmth in her complexion. She styled her hair, applied a touch of makeup, and when she looked in the mirror, she allowed herself a moment of quiet confidence. She felt ready. The gift, though small in size, was the heart of her preparation. Wrapped carefully in a box tied with a silk ribbon, it sat waiting on the table. She ran her fingers over it, whispering the words she planned to say when she handed it to him. The gift wasn't just an object. It was her attempt to close the emotional gap she had been sensing. It was her way of saying, I see us, I still believe in us, and I want to keep building this life together. As the evening drew near, anticipation tightened in her chest. She pictured him walking through the door, weary from work, only to be greeted by the glowing scene she had created. She imagined his surprise, his laughter, his gratitude. Little did she know, as she waited with hope in her heart, that the night would unfold in a way she never expected. The clock struck 7, and with every passing minute the narrator's excitement grew. The house was glowing with candlelight, the food stayed warm in the oven, and the carefully wrapped gift sat neatly on the table. She rehearsed her smile, even her words, envisioning how he would walk through the door and instantly sense the love she had poured into the night. But when the door finally opened, the moment didn't unfold the way she had imagined. Her husband stepped inside with a smile, but it felt different. It wasn't the wide, genuine grin that usually lit up his face when he saw her. Instead, it was small, strained, as though painted on. His eyes flickered around the room, taking in the effort she had put into the decorations. But there was no spark of delight, only a quick nod of acknowledgement. She rushed to greet him, wrapping her arms around him, but even in his embrace there was a stiffness. "Happy birthday," she whispered warmly. He kissed her cheek, muttered a thank you, and set his bag down. On the surface, everything seemed fine, but the narrator felt the weight of something unsaid pressing between them. They sat down for dinner, and she served him the dishes she had worked on all day. He complimented the food, but his tone was distracted. His phone, placed beside his plate, buzzed more than once, and each time he glanced at it quickly before turning it over. She tried to ignore it, tried to pretend that it was just work pulling him away, but the flicker of guilt in his eyes when he caught her noticing told her otherwise. The conversation, once easy and flowing between them, felt forced. She asked about his day, and he gave vague answers. She cracked a small joke, and he laughed politely but not wholeheartedly. She felt like she was performing for an audience that wasn't really present, and yet she kept smiling, reminding herself that maybe he was just tired, maybe she was reading too much into his distracted mood. Still, the small cracks became harder to ignore. His gaze drifted often, his fingers tapped nervously on the table, and he seemed eager to move things along rather than linger in the warmth of the evening. The narrator, trying to push down the growing unease, held on to hope that once she gave him the gift, everything would change. Maybe then he would soften. Maybe then he would see the depth of her love. But beneath her hope, a seed of suspicion began to sprout. It wasn't the food, the decorations, or the effort he failed to fully appreciate. It was the way his eyes kept darting to his phone, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, the way his body seemed present but his mind elsewhere. The perfect evening she had envisioned was slipping through her fingers, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, though she couldn't yet put her finger on it. And soon, the gift she had prepared would collide with the secret he was hiding, shattering the fragile illusion she was clinging to. After dinner, the narrator felt the heaviness between them deepen. The evening, which was supposed to feel intimate and celebratory, carried an awkward silence that she tried desperately to fill with small talk. She glanced at the clock and realized the night was slipping away faster than she had planned. If there was a moment that could redeem it, it was the gift she had prepared, the one thing she hoped would remind her husband of the bond they once shared. With a hopeful smile, she stood up and retrieved the small ribbon-wrapped box from the table. Her heart fluttered with anticipation as she walked toward him. "I wanted to save the best for last," she said softly, placing the gift in his hands. Her husband looked at the box with mild surprise, though his expression quickly shifted back to the guarded neutrality he had worn all evening. He untied the ribbon slowly, carefully peeling back the paper as though buying himself time. The narrator leaned forward slightly, her eyes studying his face, searching for a flicker of joy, for that spark she had imagined when she first planned the evening. Inside the box lay a personalized leather watch strap, engraved with their initials and the date of their wedding. She had chosen it because she knew he cherished his watch. It was one of his daily essentials, and she wanted him to carry a piece of their story with him wherever he went. When he lifted it from the box, his lips curved into a smile, but it was faint, almost mechanical. "It's nice," he said after a pause. "Thank you." The words were polite but not heartfelt. She felt her chest tighten. This wasn't the reaction she had hoped for. She had imagined him embracing her, pulling her into his arms, maybe even tearing up at the thoughtfulness of the gift. Instead, his tone was flat, his eyes already shifting away as though the gesture meant little to him. Trying to salvage the moment, she leaned closer. "I thought it could be a way to keep us close," she whispered. "Every time you check the time, you'll think of us." For a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or discomfort. He cleared his throat, placed the strap back into the box, and set it aside on the table. "It's really thoughtful," he repeated, this time softer, but still lacking warmth. The narrator forced a smile, but inside, she felt her heart sink. The gift had been her way of reaching across the growing gap between them, but instead of pulling them closer, it seemed to highlight just how far apart they had drifted. She tried to hold on to hope, telling herself that maybe he was simply tired from the day, that perhaps tomorrow he would wear the strap and show his appreciation. Yet deep down, she couldn't ignore the truth gnawing at her. His reaction wasn't about the gift itself. It was about where his heart truly was. The exchange left her feeling exposed, her vulnerability met with indifference. It was in that moment she realized the birthday night she had so carefully planned had become something entirely different. Instead of a celebration of love, it had become a silent stage where the cracks in their marriage were on full display, and as she watched him glance once more at his phone, her suspicions hardened into certainty. There was someone else, and no gift in the world could compete with that. The silence after the gift exchange lingered, heavy and suffocating. The narrator sat across from her husband, forcing herself to hold her composure, but inside her thoughts churned. His detached reaction, his constant glances at his phone, his stiffness. It was no longer something she could explain away as fatigue or stress. The truth was circling closer, and she could feel it in her bones. Finally, unable to bear the weight of her suspicions any longer, she broke the silence. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly, trying to keep her tone light, though her heart pounded in her chest. He looked up at her, startled, as if pulled out of his own thoughts. "Yeah, of course," he replied too quickly. "Why wouldn't it be?" But she saw it, the way his eyes darted to the side, the slight tremor in his voice. He was hiding something, and she knew in that moment that she couldn't let it go. "I don't believe you," she said, her voice firmer this time. "You've been distant all night. Even your smile. It's not real. I need you to be honest with me." The words hung in the air, daring him to respond. For a long moment, he sat frozen, his fork still resting against his plate. Then, with a deep sigh, he set it down and rubbed his hands over his face. The act alone told her the truth before he even spoke. "There's something I should tell you," he began, his tone low, almost reluctant. Her breath caught in her throat, but she forced herself to listen. "I didn't want it to come out this way," he continued. "But there's someone else." The world seemed to tilt beneath her. She gripped the edge of the table, her heart racing, her ears ringing. She had imagined this possibility in fleeting, fearful moments, but hearing it aloud was a different kind of pain, raw, undeniable, devastating. "How long?" she managed to whisper, her voice trembling. He hesitated before answering, and that hesitation spoke louder than words. "A few months," he admitted finally. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't plan it, but I can't deny that it did. Her chest tightened as if someone had driven a knife straight through it. The candles flickering on the table, the roses she had so carefully arranged, the gift she had chosen with love, all of it felt like a cruel mockery now. The night she had envisioned as a celebration of their marriage had become the stage for its betrayal. She swallowed hard, fighting back tears. And tonight? Were you with her before you came home? His silence was her answer. He didn't look at her, didn't speak, only lowered his head in shame. Her world collapsed in that instant. The man she had devoted herself to, the one she had hoped to surprise with love and thoughtfulness, had already given his heart, or at least his desires, to another. The truth, though devastating, gave her clarity. There was no more second-guessing, no more hoping it was her imagination. The gift hadn't fallen flat because it wasn't good enough. It had fallen flat because he no longer valued what it represented, and with that realization came the painful awareness that this birthday night was not about love or surprises. It was about uncovering the betrayal that had been hiding in the shadows, waiting to be exposed. The confession lingered in the air like smoke that refused to clear. The narrator sat frozen at the table, staring at the man she thought she knew, the man she had spent years loving, building a home with, trusting implicitly. Her husband avoided her eyes, fidgeting with his hands as if the act of looking at her might burn him. The silence stretched unbearably until she finally found her voice. "You destroyed us tonight," she whispered, the words sharp but fragile. "On your birthday in this house, with everything I planned for you, you gave me this." Her voice broke, and for the first time he looked at her, his expression full of guilt, but not enough to undo the truth he had revealed. She pushed her chair back and stood, needing space, air, distance. Every corner of the room felt tainted, the flickering candles, the carefully cooked dinner, the unopened bottle of wine. All of it seemed meaningless now. Her stomach turned at the thought that while she had been pouring her energy into making him feel cherished, he had already betrayed her. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said quietly, his tone pleading. "It just did. I still care about you. Don't!" She cut him off sharply, her anger finally piercing through the numbness. "Don't you dare say you care. If you cared, you wouldn't have lied to me for months. You wouldn't be looking at your phone while I'm sitting here pouring my heart into you." Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. She turned away, walking into the living room where the decorations she had so lovingly arranged now mocked her. The roses looked wilted. The soft glow of the candles felt suffocating instead of warm. She thought about their years together, the countless sacrifices, the small moments that had once made their marriage feel unshakable. And now, in one evening, those memories were tainted. She wondered if every smile, every late night at work, every distracted glance had been leading to this truth. Hours seemed to pass in silence, broken only by the sound of her own breathing and the occasional shuffle of his footsteps behind her. When she finally turned back to him, she realized something. She wasn't asking for explanations anymore. She didn't need to hear names, reasons, or excuses. The betrayal was enough. "I don't know what happens next," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I know I can't stay in this moment with you." "Not tonight." She picked up her phone and walked toward the bedroom, leaving him standing alone in the dimly lit room, surrounded by the remnants of the night that had unraveled everything. Later, lying in bed, she let herself cry silently, the tears soaking into her pillow. Yet beneath the grief was a strange clarity. She had done everything in her power to show love, to hold their marriage together. The failure wasn't hers. The birthday night that began with hope and love had ended with betrayal and heartbreak. But as she stared at the ceiling in the darkness, she made herself a quiet promise. This wound would not define her. She would rise from it, stronger, wiser, and unwilling to let anyone diminish her worth again. What he gave her was the truth. And though it hurt more than anything else, it was also the beginning of her freedom.